Hello, it's approximately 6 o'clock. Thank you if you've joined us early to get on and make sure everything's working okay. We will not start this online virtual public workshop, or I should say drop-in session, until 6:30. So we do have some slides that you can look at as you're hanging tight, but once you're on and everything's working, you can also just go ahead and do other things and come back at a few minutes before 6:30. I'll be checking in periodically just to let you know how everything's going. But again, you've made it, and we'll see you. We'll start up at 6:30. So thank you. So again, welcome everyone. My name is Andrew Bing, and I'm the facilitator for tonight's virtual open house drop-in session number 2. We thank you for joining us. We will not start until 6:30, but we did encourage people to sign up early just to make sure that they navigated all the technology and got to where you're at now by virtue of the fact that hopefully you can hear me. I encourage you to review the scrolling slides. There's a lot of good information there. I also encourage you to go to the 5 Points website in order to review tonight's presentation if you'd like to do that, or any other information related to the 5 Points transportation study. That website, which is on the screen right now, is 5points.del.gov. Again, I'll pop in periodically up until 6:30 when we will actually start our virtual open house. So thank you. And again, I'm going to go back on mute now for a little while. So again, welcome everyone. My name is Andrew Bing. I'll be the facilitator for tonight's virtual open house drop-in session, our second one. We are not going to be starting until 6:30, but we're glad that some of you have gotten on early in order to make sure you're here. There are slides that are showing a lot of important information about this session. And while you're waiting, if you have any interest, you can go to the 5 Points website, which is fivepoints.del.gov, in order to review tonight's presentation, as well as other materials related to the 5 Points Transportation Study. In terms of question and answers tonight, the format will be a presentation that will last about 20 minutes, and we will have a couple poll questions in there that we'll ask for your input. For question and answers at the end, what we're asking is that you use the Q&A panel on the right part of your screen to submit any questions you have. You can submit them now, you can submit them during the presentation, or you can submit them at the end of the presentation. At the end, I will be going through them and we'll be asking some of our panelists who are made up of DelDOT and Sussex County representatives, those questions for them to respond to. So again, just hang tight and we'll start up at 6:30. Thanks so much. Again, hello everyone. This is Andrew Bing, again the facilitator for tonight's virtual open house, 5 Points Transportation Study virtual open house. We're getting closer to 6:30, which is when we're going to start, which will mean you won't have to listen to me talk anymore. But again, keep reviewing the slides that are showing on the screen, and we will start up at 6:30. We do have information on the 5 Points website that you can review while we're waiting or at the conclusion of our drop-in session. That website is 5points.deldot.gov. And again, if during the presentation or at the end, if you have any questions, we're going to be doing that using the Q&A feature on the right side of your screen, the Q&A panel. Just submit a question in that panel, and at the end of the presentation, we will be responding to questions. Again, we're getting close. We're about 7 minutes away. I'm going to go back on mute, and I'll come back on one more time before we start the presentation. Thank you. So again, hello everyone. Again, my name is Andrew Bing. I'll be facilitating the 5 Points Transportation Study Virtual Open House, our second one. We're starting to see a few more people joining, which is great. We are going to start up at 6:30, and I will be turning it over to my colleague, Jeff Rigner, who will be walking through a presentation. You can see some slides scrolling through that has a lot of important information. The slide you see right now is telling you that all of our questions will be done through the Q&A panel on the right side of the screen. Just type it into the box either during the presentation or at the end of the presentation, and I will go through those and the team will respond to them. Jeff will be giving more details about that during the presentation. If you are unable to use the Q&A box, you can see on the screen, it just scrolled through, but it'll come back up. But you can send an email to Jennifer Sinelli, and her, again, email is jennifer.sinelli, CINELLI, @delaware.gov. Our preferred method is that you use the Q&A box, but if that's not working for you, you can send the email. And you can see on the screen right now is the 5points.del.gov web address, where you can get all information related to the 5 Points Transportation Study, including tonight's presentation, the implementation plan, and all other information. So at this point, it is 7:30. We are expecting a few more people to come on, but out of fairness to the people who have logged on early and to honor the time that we said we would start, which is 6:30, I'm going to ask Jeff to pull up the presentation. And as he's doing that, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Jeff, and I will be back on for some interactive polling. We have a couple polling questions we're going to go through, and then I'll come back on for the Q&A session at the end. So again, thank you all for joining us, and Jeff Rigner.
Thanks, Andrew. And thank you all for being here on behalf of DelDOT and Sussex County. We're very pleased to see so many people participating in tonight's drop-in session for the 5 Points Transportation Study. As Andrew mentioned, my name is Jeff Rigner. I'm a consultant assisting DelDOT with the study. I've had the pleasure of meeting probably many of you as part of our past public workshops or working group meetings for the project. The last several weeks have been a challenging time for all of us, and we hope that this virtual open house gives you time to think about something other than the pandemic. But despite the fact that we've all been facing challenges, we have, as DelDOT and Sussex County, been moving forward with implementation of the 5 Points Transportation Study. Tonight also gives us an opportunity to provide focused online public engagement, which we may use to supplement our in-person meetings even after COVID-19 is behind us. So we're interested not only in your thoughts about the study itself tonight, but also in how this type of online meeting works for you. So we'll have a survey question at the end of today's session to find out more about your thoughts. So this presentation will run for about 15 or 20 minutes, including a couple of interactive poll questions for you to participate in. But we'll leave most of the session as an opportunity to answer your questions. And as Andrew mentioned, this presentation is available on the website for your reference in case I go past anything quickly and you haven't caught it all. You're welcome to ask questions at any time, and we'll do our best to answer as many as we can before we wrap up. Andrew is going to serve as our moderator, and you'll continue to hear from him periodically today. But during the session, we would ask that you type all of your questions and comments in the Q&A box on the right side of your screen. You may need to click that little pointed arrow next to Q&A to open up the Q&A panel to type in your question. If for some reason you and there's another method too, if you scroll toward the bottom, you may see a circle with 3 dots in it, like you see there at the bottom right, and you can just click Q&A. If for some reason you can't use the Q&A function, please email DelDOT's project manager, Jennifer Sinelli, at the email address shown on your screen at any time during the session. Her email address is at the bottom of most slides in case you don't have a chance to jot it down here. But before we get started, we have some questions for you.
Great. Thanks, Jeff. So we do have a couple questions for you right now. I'm going to ask Jennifer to pull up the first poll question. Okay. So you should see on the right side of your screen the poll. If you don't, again, as Jeff said earlier, you click on your screen and you click into that three dot area. And in addition to the Q&A, as you can see on the screen right now, you can also click polling, and that will pull up the polling. So the first question over on the right is, how did you hear about the 5 Points virtual open house? And you can check any that apply here. You're not limited to just one, but they are following 5 Points email update, other email, the website, through social media, through the newspaper or newsletter, through a friend or family member, or through some other means. So just use your mouse and just click on one or more of those options. And we'll give you a couple seconds here just in case you were struggling with getting the polling up. Again, if you don't see the polling question, click on the screen and click on the three dot circle and then click on polling, and that should pull that up for you. I'll give it a few more seconds. Okay, I'm going to ask Jennifer to close that out. There is a little bit of a lag, so it'll take a couple seconds before we see the results of the polling. Okay, so most people didn't have an answer, but a few people, 6 of you, through the following 5 Points communication, and a few others through the website, through the newspaper or newsletter, through a friend or family member or other. So again, we thank you for providing us that information. It just helps us as we try to think of ways to reach as many people as we can. This through tonight and the other drop-in sessions will help us try to target our outreach. So let's go to the next question. Okay, what is your age range? Again, we ask this not because we're necessarily interested in how old you are, but we're trying to figure out who we're targeting and who we're reaching through these virtual open houses. We're hoping we can reach as many different people as we can, and so we're just trying to get a sense of people's ages. So again, for this one, you can only click once, but it's up to 18 years, 19 to 34, 35 to 49, 50 to 64, 65 or older, or again, if you prefer not to answer, that's perfectly fine. Again, just click on one of those. I'll wait a couple more seconds. Okay, Jennifer, why don't you close this one out? Again, there'll be a couple second delay. And of the people who chose to answer, we have one person who's in that 19 to 34 range. We have 4 people in the 50 to 64 and 4 people in the 65 plus. But the majority of people chose not to answer, which again is perfectly fine. So I'm going to turn the presentation back over to Jeff. There will be one more question at the very end tonight. And but for right now, Jeff.
Well, thanks for your participation in that. I'd like to give you a little bit of background about the study for those who are not familiar. During what we called phase 1 of the study, a working group spent most of 2018 developing 78 recommendations for land use and transportation improvements within the 5 Points area. With input from the working group and from hundreds of members of the public, probably including some of you, we took those recommendations and started focusing on implementation of them in 2019 and beyond. We're calling that implementation stage phase 2. So the purpose of this virtual open house is to provide information from our 2019 annual report, which you see here. The virtual open house has 2 parts. One of them is website materials at 5points.del.gov, which you see there at the bottom left. If you haven't looked at those yet, it would be good to do so because they go into much more detail than we can in this session. And then the second part is 5 drop-in sessions. You're part of the second one. These will give you an opportunity to ask questions, as I mentioned earlier, about the 5 Points transportation study. So if you'd like to take a look at the report, please go to the website that's noted there Click on Virtual Open House, which is at a banner at the top of the screen, and then 2019 5 Points Annual Report. So the report really has three main sections that we'd like to summarize today. The first is meetings and communications that occurred last year. The second is implementation progress that was made last year. And then finally, proposed priorities for 2020. And I'm pleased to note that we have made progress already in the first few months of the year. So let's start with meetings and communications. So there are currently 20 working group members that were selected by DelDOT and Sussex County to provide a broad representation of interests in the study area. Elected officials, business representatives, residents, representatives of civic associations, and what have you. We started quarterly meetings of the Phase 2 working group this past April, actually a year ago, April 2019, and meetings are generally held the last Monday of January, April, July, and October. We did not have an in-person meeting, of course, in April of this year, but we provided materials that we would have offered the working group, and they're available on the website as well. The study certainly, both in Phase 1 and Phase 2, has benefited from active public participation. We had an average of 40 members of the public attending each of our working group meetings in 2019, and we're thankful for that. So some other meetings included hearings for DelDOT's Capital Transportation Program. They were held last September. Shante Hastings, who's DelDOT's chief engineer, and you'll see her as part of our panel in a few minutes, provided a presentation to the working group last year on how the CTP works. But basically, it's a list of projects that DelDOT will undertake over the next 6 years. So the draft CTP for fiscal years 2021 through 2026 was approved by the Council on Transportation in February. Because a portion of the CTP is federally funded, federal approval will be sought this September. So there are a number of projects in the 5 Points area that were in the past CTP that are continuing to move forward. You can see them here on your screen. There are two grade-separated intersections on Route 1, one at Cave Neck Road and one at Minos Conaway Road. There are improvements to US 9 Kings Highway from Dartmouth Drive to Freeman Highway. There are improvements to Plantation Road between Route 24 and Route 9. And the Phase 1 of that, which is north of Robinsonville Road, is going to be moving to construction here shortly. Route 24, which is under construction between Mulberry and Knoll Road and Route 1. A realignment of Old Orchard Road at West Coast Corner, and finally Phase 2 of the Lewis Park and Ride and Maintenance Facility. There are also several new projects proposed in the new CTP, a number of which were generated by recommendations from this study, so it's already bearing fruit. One of them is an intersection improvement at US 9 and Minos Conaway Road. That project will consist of a southbound right turn lane, on Minos Conaway Road approaching Route 9. DelDOT will initiate a study of widening Route 9 from Ward Avenue, which is just west of Route 1, to Old Vine Road at the Vineyards. We'll also intend to look at intersection improvements at the triangular intersection of Cave Neck Road, Hudson Road, and Sweetbriar Road. DelDOT's going to look into widening Beaver Dam Road, Route 23, from Route 1 to Dairy Farm Road. There are a couple of additional intersection improvements along Old Landing Road, one at Airport Road and one at Warrington Road. And finally, implementation of recommendations from the New Road Master Plan, Byway Master Plan, between Nassau Road and Old Orchard Road. So what does all of this mean? What this means is that if the CTP is approved, that $116 million split between state and federal funding is proposed in the 5 Points area over the next 6 years. That's a significant investment in a part of the state that desperately needs it. And it really does show that the 5 Points Transportation Study is having a real effect on bringing transportation improvements to the area. In terms of other communications from the 2019 annual report, there was a website refresh that was done. It actually was completed in March of this year. Hopefully you've had a chance to look at it. As I mentioned, if you haven't, please take some time afterward and browse 5points.del.gov. We'd be happy to hear your comments on it if you have some suggestions to offer. And then finally, we also initiated a series of email updates called Following 5 Points. Generally speaking, these email updates are sent out at the end of each month that we don't have a working group meeting, so 8 times a year in general, but we also use these emails when special messages need to be sent, such as preparing for this virtual open house that you're attending tonight. So that was meetings and communication. Now, what has occurred in terms of implementation so far? Through the end of 2019, there were 13 recommendations that were either completed or ongoing. And ongoing means recommendations that are part of DelDOT's or the county's everyday way of doing things, so they can never really be classified as complete. There were also 25 projects that were in progress. So between those categories, in progress, completed and ongoing, 38 of 78 recommendations, so just about half, were moving forward as of the end of 2019, which is great progress in just a year's worth of work. So these bars show the status of each of the projects at the beginning of 2019 and the end of 2019. So what you see here, going from top to bottom, the blue is ongoing, as I mentioned earlier. The dark green is projects that are recommendations that are complete. Light green is in progress. Hashed is a priority for a particular year. And then the gray is longer term recommendations that haven't been addressed yet. So our goal ultimately is to move all of these projects or recommendations to those top 2 bars, complete or ongoing. It's going to take a long time to do that, of course, but year over year, as we produce these annual reports, you're going to see those blue and dark green bars getting wider and wider, showing how far we're moving forward. And in fact, the implementation plan that's on the website, which is up to date as of May, shows that we've already moved one of those in progress recommendations to complete and another one to ongoing during 2020. So even during the challenges we're facing these days, we're continuing to make progress, which is great news. So finally, what are our priorities for 2020? Well, we still have those 24 recommendations that are in progress, and DelDOT and the county are going to continue to work on moving those recommendations forward to completion. DelDOT and the county are also going to work together to proceed with the Henlopen TID, Transportation Improvement District, which those of you who have attended our working group meetings have heard a lot about, to better link land use and transportation investments in the area. And both agencies will continue to work with developers on transportation improvements related to their developments to make sure that they pay their fair share for transportation improvements. We also are planning on moving forward with 5 new recommendations in 2020. These are recommendations from the original list of 78 that are not yet started, and we intend to start before the end of the year. I'll go through those now. B8 is to study the feasibility of a parking management system to alert travelers when parking lots at major destinations are full. So this originally came up from the working group with respect to Cape Henlopen State Park. As you know, at least pre-pandemic, on summer weekends, the parking lot often fills up. Folks drive there, are unable to find a place to park, and have to go find a different place. By having signs on Route 1 that are continually updated showing whether parking is available, folks will have the opportunity to be able to park, say, at the Lewis Park and Ride and be able to take a bus to get to their destinations rather than going to a full parking lot. So that will require cooperation, of course, with DENREC and with those who manage other major parking lots in the study area. Recommendation B25 is to identify the costs and benefits of dedicating Nassau Commons Boulevard to public use, which would allow an additional public access point between Route 1 north of 5 Points and Route 9 west of 5 Points. Recommendation C6 is to study the feasibility of lengthening left and right turn lanes throughout the study area. At our January working group meeting, a number of members offered several suggestions for locations to look at first, which DelDOT will proceed with here shortly. Recommendation C12 is to study access management opportunities along Route 1 in the study area. Access management means consolidating driveways and providing means to get from one property to another without having to get out on Route 1. So it's a real benefit both in terms of safety and in terms of roadway capacity. So one of the locations that we're going to be looking at and have actually started discussions on is the possibility of providing direct access to the Lowe's parking lot from Route 1 rather than simply having access only from Plantation Road. And then finally, the fifth of these recommendations is to identify potential connections to and from the Lewis Transit Center by walking and biking. So that concludes my part of the presentation. So we're pleased to address your questions regarding the 5 Points transportation study. Our moderator, Andrew, will compile questions related to the study and forward them to the folks you see listed here to answer. They include Shante Hastings, who's DelDOT's chief engineer, Mark Cote, who some of you may have seen at working group meetings. Since we last saw him in person, he was promoted to director of planning at DelDOT. Josh Thomas, who is a planning supervisor at DelDOT and DelDOT's representative on the 5 Points working group. And finally, Jamie Whitehouse, who also was recently promoted to director of planning and zoning for Sussex County. So, Andrew, please take it away with any questions we may have received.
Sure. And again, even as I start to ask these questions, if you want more information or if there's a question that you would like to ask specifically, use that Q&A panel over to the right, and any question that comes in, we will try to handle. But first question I have is probably for Shante. But how can we correlate the implementation plan recommendations with the CTP projects themselves? Is there a correlation between the two? Or if I see it in the implementation plan, does that mean I'm going to see it in the CTP?
Sure. I'm actually going to turn that one over to Josh. I think the other night he did a great job of answering that one.
Hey, Shante, you trailed off just a little bit, but yeah, I can try to take this one. The implementation plan has, well, first of all, can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. First time I spoke, I just want to make sure. So the implementation plan has a remarks column that has detailed information. And also our annual report that we published just recently for 2019 has a wealth of information and a lot of detailed information about the recommendations that have changed status, that have become complete, that have become ongoing, that will become priorities. So I would recommend reviewing those. But in terms, I want to make sure I try to answer this question the right way. You said, so the question was whether there is a correlation, like if it says it's a CTP project, will it in fact be a project? If we are referencing a CTP project in the implementation plan, then yes, that recommendation will be addressed by either a project in the current CTP that is approved and that we are currently operating under, and then if it might reference the future CTP that we will have final federal approval for this fall. If the recommendation is not, if there's not a comment talking about a specific CTP project, then it is yet to be programmed as a project.
And I guess not all of the implementation plan, the 78, are even the type of project that would ultimately be in the CTP. Some of them will be handled through other means besides the CTP. Is that correct?
Correct. Matter of fact, that would be the first priority, if possible, is always, the most efficient way to use resources is always to see if there's a way of solving a problem, using our existing system. A lot of times that's not possible, and investments need to be made to improve the system. But yeah, the most efficient way is always to see what we can do to optimize and make our system more efficient.
Great. I have a question now related to the county. Obviously, this 5 Points Transportation Study is a partnership between DelDOT and Sussex County. The question is, what initiatives are being undertaken by the county now related to 5 Points? We've got Jamie Whitehouse with the county.
Thank you. It's Jamie Whitehouse here. First of all, Andrew, can you hear me okay? Is my sound okay? So, as always, there are applications coming through the process continuously, and the 5 Points transportation study area is quite a large area. So we are seeing site plans for development at the individual application level. We see, for example, requests for site plan approval. Last October, we saw a request for the vineyards at Nassau Valley, phase 4, which is the commercial additions there, a gas station, and we are requiring interconnectivity as part of commercial developments. And that is actually a requirement in the zoning code, and has been a requirement for well over a year now. And when we see new commercial development, we are requiring it to be interconnected with the adjoining commercial development. And what that does is that it reduces trips outside the site and reduces the road network. Also, the county is working on updating its memorandum of understanding, which is at a strategic level that affects the entire study area. And basically, we have an MOU already. The memorandum of understanding governs the relationship between the county and DelDOT in terms of what information is required to make a decision on an individual land use application. And we have an MOU, but it dates back to 1988. So the county is currently embarking in an initiative at the moment to update the MOU in conjunction with DelDOT and in conjunction with public input. And there's been hearings before the Planning and Zoning Commission. There was a recommendation on January 24th of this year to approve the memorandum of understanding subject to changes. And there was a hearing before County Council this year, and work is still ongoing on that front. So we're hoping to bring that forward this year. So.
Great. Thank you, Jamie, and it's good to have you as part of the team.
It's good to be here. Thank you.
So another question we have is, why is the Nassau School project not mentioned in the list of projects? There is a preliminary plan to have a connector road from Route 1 to Route 9. And the kind of a follow-up to that was the best property has been acquired towards 5 Points improvements and includes the school. So Shantae, is that something you might be able to handle? Shantae, you're on mute.
Thank you.
You
so I believe what's being referenced here is actually part of the Plantation Road project. So there is a connector from Route 1 to Route 9 that then ties into the new section of Plantation Road. That project is currently in design and is scheduled to go out to construction in 2022. We're about to start the right-of-way acquisition process. And related to the Nassau School itself, as everyone knows, the department did purchase the best properties, and we have done some minor improvements, including repairing the roof last fall. We also had a bee colony that had established itself within one of the walls of the Nassau School. So we did work with the Beekeepers Association to remove the bees in the hive, and have recently redone the cedar shake siding on the Nassau School. And we are currently working with the State Historic Preservation Office to determine the path forward for ownership and maintenance of the school.
Okay, great. Thanks, Shantae. And again, you'll hear me keep reminding people of this, but at any point, if people want to ask a question, you can do that. The next question is, so many of the recommendations are tied to the TID study. How can you just kind of go into a little bit more detail about how the TID affects the implementation of a recommendation? don't know who wants to
Can
take
handle
that.
that one, Andrew.
Okay, Mark?
So
Great.
this is again Mark Cote. I'm the director of LDOT. And so the kind of coordination between the TID and the 5 Points transportation study is that any of those transportation study elements that are encompassed within the TID, the plan for that is the TID will have its own, once it's adopted, have its own set of projects that will be prioritized and added back into the CTP. And so we'll work together with all of the 5 Points projects and the CTP and the Henlopen TID.
Okay, great. Next question. What is the, and this, again, Jamie, this is probably best directed to you. What is the county doing to promote interconnections between developments?
So good question, Andrew. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
So there's a code for subdivisions, for example. The zoning code actually contains this provision already that where opportunities exist for interconnectivity, it is for the decision maker to decide whether it is appropriate to make that a requirement of approval. Now, it is something that staff discuss on larger scale subdivisions through the PLUS process. So that's the preliminary land use review service that exists between the county and the state, to which DELDOT participates as well. So this is something that is definitely encouraged, and from an emergency access point of view for emergency vehicles, it is something that we do require as a county, not in every single case. For example, sometimes it's not practical to facilitate emergency interconnectivity through wetlands, for example, where you cannot achieve a hard surface. And there are developments where, for example, you can have a stub road that exists to the property, allowing future subdivisions to connect to that should adjoining land come forward for development in the future. So the zoning code already contains this provision. So I don't see that a need for any legislative change in terms of our zoning code. It's just a matter of identifying this and discussing it very early in the process with developers, particularly for subdivisions, and particularly where we see parcels that may be adjoining parcels that could come forward in the coming years. So it very much is a matter of fact and degree, and you have to look at it on a site-by-site basis. Good question.
If I could add to that, I would also like to say that, while most of the subdivisions in Sussex County are privately maintained, if they are state maintained, we have interconnection requirements also in our regulations. And it's a good way to address some of those concerns about congestion, the need for signals, emergency response, that interconnections help provide solutions to all of those problems.
Okay, great. And just a reminder for all of our, I know it's hard, and we're the virtual setting, but just try to keep voices up and strong, because people are starting to tail off a little bit. But the next question we have is, why aren't all the projects that say in progress or complete, why are they not on the DELDOT project website? I don't know if one of our panelists, or Jeff, if that maybe is something you want to come back on for.
Andrew, I can. This
Okay,
is Josh.
good.
Yeah,
Yep.
I think that. I think that kind of piggybacks off an earlier question, in the sense that a recommendation is different than a project. So a recommendation was the outcome or the output of the phase 1 working group. But if the recommendation was an achievable objective that doesn't necessarily need to be a separate project, like we talked about a few minutes ago, that's why there can be recommendations that may have been complete or in progress, but they're not standalone capital transportation projects that you're going to see listed. So yeah, I mean, I think that gets at the root of the question, but essentially, it may have been something that a change we implemented or something that we looked at in one of the department's programs. For example, like a lot of our traffic improvements can be made within our traffic studies program, which is its own line item. It's not a separate project that has to be completed.
And I assume also, Josh, that there are separate places where the money will come from. So not all projects, or I should say recommendations, will necessarily come from the CTP. They may come from HSIP or some other bucket of funds.
Yeah, and that's really sort of it's a technicality, because technically all the money that we are spending is in the CTP. It's just how it's shown in the CTP. So if it's part of a safety program, right, part of bike and pedestrian program, those are kind of like almost like summary line items. Like that is the amount of money we're spending on bike and pedestrian program, but it's not showing you all the individual things we did as part of that program. Whereas the larger, we call them standalone projects that require its own kind of separate effort, that they're listed individually. So technically everything we do is in that program. It's just maybe not listed as an individual project. So if anybody ever has a question about a particular recommendation, like, we can provide information about, kind of what programs were used to kind of address that recommendation, but it may not translate to a standalone project. Hopefully all that makes sense.
Great. Okay, next question that I have is the Plantation, and Shantae, I think, touched on Plantation Road a little bit, but just more specifically, is the Plantation Road project going to restrict traffic on Salt Marsh Boulevard?
Yes, so the community of Henlopen Landing reached out to us last year asking for Salt Marsh Boulevard to be restricted so that it wouldn't be used as a cut through once the Plantation Road project is completed. We are working with the community on that effort. We support it. And so it will be done as part of our overall Plantation Road project as it moves forward into construction.
Okay. And the next question I have is more of a statement, but also there's a question in here, which is: a traffic signal is needed at Clay Road and Kings Highway. That's the statement part. The question is, how long until we can get a signal there?
Great question. We have started the design process for implementing a signal at the Clay and Kings Highway intersection. I don't have a schedule for the improvements. We will do some public outreach as part of our design process over the next few months. So we will take feedback from constituents, but we understand the importance of getting a signal installed at that intersection, and we are working towards that effort.
Okay. And again, if anyone on right now has any questions, again, use the question and answer panel on the right. I'm starting to run out of questions here, so we're kind of getting towards the end of the Q&A. But again, if there's anything that you would like to ask, just feel free to do that. Question: what's the status of the extension of Mulberry Knoll Road? So that's one of the recommendations in the yellow section for those who track it by color. What is the status of that effort?
Mark, do you have an update on that?
I'm not sure if I don't believe that is in the current CTP. So that is a project that will need to be added in the future and prioritized.
Okay, and I see Jeff just popped onto the screen, so I think you have something, Jeff?
Yeah, I can actually answer that. It is not a CTP project at this point. That's correct. However, there is planning money that is available to initiate a study to follow up on the TID. The TID looked at the potential for extending Mulberry Knoll Road north parallel to Plantation Road all the way up to Route 9. And that study work is tentatively slated to occur starting next fiscal year.
Okay. I have one more question. The last question I have right now is for recommendation B13, which is to study alternatives to both meter and slow southbound traffic approaching 5 Points. So that's what that B13 recommendation is. The implementation plan says that that is now complete, but I still think people are driving way too fast. So the question is there anything else that can be done to help with that problem?
That's a great question. We are actually seeing speeding problems throughout the state, unfortunately. So there are a few different things that we do in that situation. The biggest one is working with law enforcement to really do that speed enforcement effort, because that typically has the most bang for the buck. I travel Route 1 daily and have seen the radar speed signs just north of Nassau Bridge in the southbound direction, and have seen people slowing down in that area a little bit more. And really what dictates the speed that people travel is kind of the context of the road. And so Route 1 is a wide open, flat, straight road, and without making significant changes to the character of it, you are going to continue to see speeding. And so we will continue to work with law enforcement to try and address it in that manner. And we're also happy to have feedback from the community about what things they would like to see in an attempt to reduce speed. We're actually going to be having a safety summit in the next month or so. It will be done virtually. And again, speeding is a problem across the state. And so we are looking for different ways to address that.
Okay, great. Thank you. What I'm going to do now is just take a pause, see if anyone else would like to submit a question. We'll wait a couple more minutes. And then if we don't get any more questions, I'm going to then move us on to our last poll question. And then we do plan on staying on this virtual open house until 6:30, just in case anyone joins late. But, we will only be on for another about 15 minutes after we're done with the poll question and so forth. But I'll just take a couple moments again, see if any more questions come in. And if they don't, we'll just complete our presentation with the last poll question. And then we can bid people a good night.
Andrew, while we're waiting, I would like to tell everyone that the SR1 Cave Neck Road grade separation project had a virtual public workshop last night. All of the materials are posted online at del.gov/projects. You can search for Cave Neck to pull up the project and view all of the materials. We will be taking comments through June the 5th, and we would love to hear feedback on the proposed selected alternative.
Right. We did get a question. So my begging worked. The question we got is, what is the status of the widening of Plantation Road between Mulberry, Knoll, and Route 24?
So I'll take that question. So there are two phases of the Plantation Road project. The first phase is from Route 9 to Robinsonville Road. And then the second phase is from Robinsonville to 24. So phase 1, as I mentioned before, we're currently in final design on that. Construction will begin in 2022. The second phase, which takes you from Robinsonville Road to 24, is also in design. We are currently evaluating how much widening is necessary as part of the 5 Points effort. We were asked to look at making Plantation a 4-lane road, so 2 lanes in each direction. We have started data gathering, looking at the feasibility, looking at the impacts, and we should, over the next couple of months, be able to roll that out to the community for input. And once we know that, that will really dictate what our schedule is for design and construction.
Okay, great. So, Jeff, why don't I think you're going to come back on, but also I think we're going to go to that last poll question. Is that correct? Jen, if you want to bring that up.
Yeah, actually, thank you, Andrew. First, we're going to, I'd like to encourage folks to take our survey. Again, at the website, 5points.del.gov. We will have a survey open, just a few questions to get your input on the study. If you click on virtual open house in the bar at the top of the page and then select online survey, we'll be taking responses until June 12th. So if you haven't yet, please do that. We'd love to get your opinions. Now, yes, we are ready for our final poll question.
Okay, great. Jen, if you could bring that poll question up again, if since we did the other questions, if you've lost your polling feature on the right, again, you either have to click the arrow to kind of open it up, or in the click on your screen and click on those three dots and then click polling, and that's how it'll come back up. The question is, DelDOT is considering online engagement opportunities in addition to in-person meetings in the future. Based on today's meeting, today's online meeting, which do you prefer? So A is, I am more likely to attend an in-person meeting. B is, I am more likely to attend an online meeting. C is, I like having both options available. D, it depends on the topic. And E is not sure. So if you could take a moment to complete that, just to, again, give us valuable information going forward. Okay, just a couple more seconds and then we'll close it out. We did get another question that just came in. So after we do this, I'm going to go back to the Q&A. Okay, Jen, if you could close this out. And again, there'll be a little bit of a lag here before we get our results. Yeah, still don't see it, Jen. Oh, there we go. Okay. Of the people who chose to answer, 5 of them, most of them said they like having both options. And another couple of people said, I'm more likely to attend the online. So again, we appreciate that feedback. I am now going to go to the question we just got. And again, it's focused on Route 24. How far to the west on Route 24 will the 4 lanes extend?
For the 4-lane section, will extend from Route 1 to the middle school and elementary school area. The project that is under construction right now goes from Mulberry Knoll Road to Route 1, and then the second phase of that project is from Mulberry Knoll to Love Creek. That, the second phase is currently in design, and it will follow on to the project that's in construction now.
Okay, thanks, Shante. And Shante, I guess I do have one question that I just thought of for you, which is, just with everything going on, as Jeff referenced at the beginning of the presentation, we obviously are in a tough time. There obviously have been impacts in terms of, from a transportation standpoint, in terms of traffic, and what is the department seeing in terms of transportation, and what do you feel any short-term or longer-term impacts may be?
So I'll say the height of the crisis, probably a month or so ago, we saw some significant traffic volume decreases throughout the state. In Sussex County, it was anywhere between 20% to 40 or 50% decreases in traffic volumes, depending if you were looking at weekdays or weekends. We had seen some of that volume come back as the governor has allowed certain businesses to reopen. During the process of having all of those lower traffic volumes, we were able to get a lot of good work done. We just reopened the intersection of Route 1 and 5. We did some crossover modifications that also included an acceleration lane. So if you were coming out at 5 and making that left to get on a northbound Route 1, you now have an acceleration lane to get up to speed. It did require us to remove certain movements from the intersection in order to do that, but that just reopened yesterday or the day before, so that was great work. We've obviously been able to hit the 24 project really hard with lower volumes. We had a small closure along one of the side streets to get some utility work done. And so while we've seen the traffic volumes decrease as the COVID crisis has continued, we've also tried to, use that to get more work done, to extend work hours so that we could limit impacts as things do reopen.
Okay, and we did get another question coming in. Will the 41 homes on Plantation Road that will be affected by widening the road receive any compensation from DelDOT?
Great question. So anytime the department needs to purchase private property for our projects in order to build them or do grading work, we do appraisals on each property that is impacted, and we work with the property owner. The appraisal will come and meet with them and get some information from them. They will create the appraisal, provide it to the property owner, and we'll make an offer basically to buy that property. And it's an active negotiation, and we have to actually get all of the land before we can go out to bid the project. So it's a process that, depending on the number of properties along the road, can take anywhere from a year to 3 years. And there's a lot of hard work that goes into it, and you'll have a personal agent from our side of things, one point of contact to go to ask questions, negotiate, and go back and forth. So yes, anytime we have to purchase property to build our projects, we have to provide fair compensation to property owners.
Okay, and another question did come in. So it's a long question and there are multiple parts, so stay with me here. How will Saddle Ridge be affected by Route 24 going from 4 lanes at Love Creek Elementary School to 2 lanes outside the development? Will you put a traffic light at the entrance to the development? And will turning left, I should say turning left will be very difficult. It says turning left will be very difficult when turning left, I assume out of that development.
I don't have the specifics related to Saddle Ridge in front of me. Happy to get back to you with some additional details. All of our projects have project websites. So again, that deldot.gov/projects. You can search for projects in 2 ways. You can type in a portion of the name and the list will get sorted, or you can actually click on the map, zoom in, and click on specific projects. And so that information is available. I just don't have it at my fingertips right now, but happy to get back to you. We've got your name here, so we will get back to you with that specific information.
Great. Okay, I don't have any more questions at this time. Again, people are more than, you can stick around. We're going to stay on here for another 9 minutes until 7:30. And if we do get any more questions or any other people showing up, we will respond to those questions. But everything we had prepared and all the Q&A is complete at this point. So you can obviously feel free to end and enjoy the rest of your night. So on behalf of the project team, I thank you for joining us. And Jeff, I don't know if you had any final closing remarks. So Mark, you had something you want to say?
I did have one thing to add, which isn't completely 5 points related, but we were able to finish up another section of the Georgetown to Lewis Trail. So the section that was added on between Log Cabin Road and Cool Spring Road just opened and is available this weekend.
Great. With that, Jeff, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. And I especially thank you to everyone who was able to participate tonight. We appreciate you taking time out of being with your families and doing other activities to be with us as part of this session. We are going to be holding our next meeting of the 5 Points Transportation Study Working Group on Monday, July 27th at 6 p.m. We certainly hope that there's a way we can do it in person. If we don't, we will be doing it online, but we're committed to that date and time. And I would also encourage you, if you have any further questions or information that you'd like to get from the study, please reach out to DelDOT's project manager, Jen Sinelli, at the email address and phone number shown on your screen. And again, thank you. Some of us will stay on the line in case you have any further questions. Otherwise, please enjoy your evening.
Again, so far, we have not received any questions and have not seen any new people show up. So we, again, will stay here for another 5 minutes, and I'll keep checking back in periodically. Thanks again.
I was going to mention to the person who asked the question about the Saddle Ridge development and how that may be affected by a signal, if you could just type in your email address and in the question and answer, then we will get it and we can get back to you. Thank you.
And I believe he's still on, if that, Mr. Sweeney.
I believe so.
Yep.
Thank you.
So again, it doesn't appear that we have anyone new on. I only see one attendee still on, but just in case we're missing it, we just wrapped up our second virtual open house drop-in session. We are staying on the line until 7:30. So if someone did happen to just join us, and if you had any questions for us, you can submit that question through the Q&A panel on the right side of your screen. In addition, if you did just join us and somehow maybe you got the time wrong or something, we do have 3 more drop-in sessions, and you can find all that information on the project website and the ability to register there. So again, it doesn't appear that anyone has joined us. We are going to wrap up our virtual open house drop-in session number 2. Again, we thank everyone who took the time to join us. I thank Jeff Rigner for his presentation. I thank all of our panelists from DelDOT and Sussex County. And of course, I thank all of the participants who joined us. And with that, we're going to sign off and have a great night. Thank you, everyone.